if you never heard the term LUFS, I'm going to tell you what LUFS are. LUFS, the unit of measurement we use to determine volume. It's the unit that the average LUFS is all you're concerned with. That's integrated over time. In other words, the front to the song to the back of the song, they take the average, and that number is what Spotify is going to say is this is how loud the song is, whatever that average is. Just to give you a cut right to the chase, because that's what we do over here. -10 and -5 is your zone of LUFS. As it gets closer to 0, it gets louder. So -10 to -5. Don't be louder than 5. Don't be lower than 10. That's just a general rule. I like to do stuff like this because I like to stake claims. I come up with these numbers because a very loud song was Post Malone's Circles, clocked in -5.5 around there on the LUFS. Very, very loud pop song. That same year, Grammy Award-winning songs clocked in 9.5 LUFS, 8.5 LUFS, 7.5. So the point is 10 to 5 is your zone, your sweet spot. I'm also taking this based on information that in the Loudness Wars, you look at like some Blink-182 stuff, and a lot of the loudest stuff that came out of the 2000 era clocks in, I think, Enemy of the State, stuff like that is like 4.5 or something like that. So in other words, 4.5 LUFS, -4.5, was during the time where we were trying to get as loud as possible, as humanly possible. Now we're in an era where it's backing off a lot because with these streaming services now being the mainstream medium of how people consume music, there's no reason to go crazy anymore because everything's being lowered anyway. Instead, what's important is finding the sweet spot. The sweet spot for your audio is going to be where you don't notice the artifacts, you don't notice the distortion, but you're getting a little bit of glue and a little bit of that beautiful effect you get from a little bit of limiting, a little compression, when everything starts to just blend together in an amazing way. Without that stuff, it's just a little less exciting, right? So the goal here is to find the sweet spot, don't overdo it. Because there's another key factor here. LUFS, the integrated LUFS over time is measuring something that it's as close as we have to how we perceive sound. However, like on a measurement we can take and use as a way to determine if something's loud or not. But it's checking sound pressure. And it's checking an average of sound pressure over time. So what does that mean? It means in a song that starts very loud and ends very loud, the sound pressure over time is going to be much higher. That average, that integrated measurement that all these services use to determine how loud it is going to be much louder over time than a song that starts very quiet, gets loud, then gets very quiet, then gets loud. So because of that change in movement of dynamics, the amount of sound pressure will be considerably lower on an average. Therefore, you're going to get a much lower number. Don't let this bug you. Don't let you pull your hair out. This means nothing. Because the way we perceive sound, we think things are louder when there's a balance in the spectrum. When there's a balance in the audio spectrum, we perceive it as louder. That's a very different thing than when there's a lot of sound pressure, we perceive it as louder. In other words, to us, when everything gets lowered on these services anyway, we are still sitting there, and that balance of front to back on the spectrum, how much mids, highs, low mids, is going to tell our ears it's louder or lower. Whereas, according to the computer, if there's a ton of low-end pressure, it's going to read as really hot. But to our ears, we can only perceive so much of it. So it's not that loud. So in other words, this is why your track could sound very, very low when you think it's so loud on the LUFS meters, and then it gets cranked down and you wonder why it's so low. This is why. Focus rather instead on how loud it is. It's not really relevant. You just need to be within that zone I gave you, 10 to 5. If you're in that zone, the rest isn't relevant. What's relevant is the balance, and the balance can be achieved by using references. References that you set to the same volume as your song will then allow you to make your song sound as wide, thick, balanced in the frequency spectrum, in other words, as balanced as those songs. So what I do is I'm sending my references from Spotify or Apple or whatever out of my computer into my interface, right, my converters, and I'm able to monitor in my session that song, whatever song I choose, so that way whatever genre I'm working in, whatever style song, I try to get as close to that as I can on a reference in terms of pick one that's really similar, because that'll allow you to get the volumes close, because that's what you're going for. Perceived level. I'm listening to the reference. I'm listening to my track. I'm setting the volumes so that they are as close as I can get them, where when I flip back and forth, I don't feel the need to make mine lower. Because keep that in mind. The track you're referencing is always going to be lower than yours. Don't think you're Superman. It's because everything's lowered on these sites. So you'll lower your master to match what's going on. It's going to have to be significantly lower. A lot of dB lower. So once you get it where, okay, now everything sounds like the same volume. As I flip, I don't feel the need to make mine lower anymore. I feel like now it's the same. Then you can start to actually hear what's going on with your mix compared to another mix. Get the balance in a place where it's awesome. Then, I guarantee when the balance is in a place that it's awesome, you can start to disregard the reference. You can get back to doing your mix and put your master wherever you had it before or whatever. Then check your LUFS meter. You won't need to do anything else other than that. Trust me, because it'll probably be in the right zone. And if you're hitting something too hard, you'll hear it. You'll be like, okay, I'm starting to hear the compression, the limit. I'm starting to hear things working, that limiter. I don't want to do that. You back off it. Piece of cake. You guys got this, all right? Somebody just had to explain it to you. Now you got it. Custom Cut Studios. Looking forward to hearing what you got to say in the comments, all right? See you soon. More stuff to come. Evan Jaffe. Take it easy.